You're listening to the Southampton Delivery Podcast, a podcast dedicated to the Southampton Football Club and all of the SFC fans.
If you want to have guarantees, you have to buy a washing machine.
Monte with a scooping
We don't lose a match, either we win or we learn. And today we learned.
Отдача, Остин все-таки забил.
It's infield to Mane, 25 yards out. Lovely ball for Bella. Onside, 1-0. Blue shot. Oh my word!
Unbelievable. We ran around the pitch like Bambi on ice. It was very, very embarrassing to watch.
And now, your host, Matt Markstone.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Southampton Delivery Podcast, a podcast and newsletter dedicated to the Southampton Football Club and all of the SFC fans, and available right here on southamptondelivery.com. My name is Matt Markstone. I am the host of the show, and no matter where you are, no matter how you may be listening, whether this is your first time or you've been here before, thanks for making the show part of your day. I hope that you enjoy it, and I'll be really, really honest. I always enjoy doing the show. I always enjoy chatting with the guests, but for the past couple of weeks, there hasn't been a lot to talk about. There hasn't been really anything concrete. And I'm really excited this week because we're going to talk about finances. Nothing scares the people in my house more than when I say, hey guys, guess what? We're going to talk about finances. But hopefully it's somewhat enjoyable for you too. Hate to say it, but it's good for me. So hopefully Tom enjoyed it and hopefully you do too. But joining me to do that is Tom Murray. You can find him on Twitter at T214Murray. He, if you remember, has been on the show before. He's involved with Alan March Sport, which provides audio description commentary for the fans at St. Mary's who are blind and visually impaired. You can get in touch with that Twitter account if you want, at Alan March Sport and also at Saints_AD. Links to all those are in the show notes, of course, as well. And Tom also does a podcast. He does the Under the Lights podcast. He's part of the team that puts that together. Links to that are also in the show notes, so you can find that, check it out, give it a listen if you are a Saints fan. And since we talked last time, Tom has moved into a different kind of role with the BBC. So he's now at the BBC Radio Solent, so you can you'll catch up on that as we get into the chat. But once again, thanks for sending in your questions. Thank you for joining the show. I hope that you enjoy it. I hope you're staying safe. I hope you're still being smart. I know we're all getting tired of this, but we just need to continue to kind of follow the government's advice, and hopefully football will be back before long. And the FA met last Thursday. The Premier League met last Friday. There's some ideas floating around. They're going to meet again this week, so hopefully there are some decisions coming down. We'll be able to discuss those on the next episode. But for now, here's Tom and I, football, finances, memorable moments, and your questions. So thanks for listening. Talk to you soon. We'd like to welcome back to the podcast Tom Murray. You can find him on Twitter at T214Murray. You can also find him as a freelancer at Solent Sport and BBC Radio Solent. He's also an AD commentator for Alan March Sport, calling all of the Saints, or a lot of the Saints home games for fans who are blind or visually impaired, and also on the Under the Lights podcast at _Saints. Tom, welcome back to the show, and thanks for taking some time to chat with me this week.
Thank you very much for having me on. When I saw the invite onto the show, I thought, fantastic, can't wait. It's something to fill the time whilst we have no football whatsoever.
Yeah, we just need something to look forward to sometimes, and sometimes this will do it for a lot of people. Usually, like the schedule has been full for so long that it's nice to get to the point where it's like, hey, I can reach back out and get some new people now. So I'm glad to have you on.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me on. Pleasure to be on.
Yeah. So, I mean, let's talk real quickly about you, because some things have changed since you've been on. We haven't had that much football, I don't think, since the last time you were on, but you have started at Radio Solent or Solent Sport. So can you just kind of walk us through kind of what your role is there, and maybe, let's just start with that, because obviously you get to work with a pretty great team. You get to become a part of a pretty great team, and just, I guess, what's that been like for you?
It's been really great. I started shadowing there in August, and I was given the opportunity just to come in, see if I liked it, and I'm working on the production side of things, so behind the scenes, just keeping everything ticking over, and I've been really enjoying it so far. and I've been doing much more recently, and it was sort of coming to almost to a peak, as it were, as before football got shut off. So a bit disappointed because I was really finding my feet, but hopefully we'll continue as football comes back whenever it does do that. So I've been really enjoying doing that there, and obviously get to work with a really good team, meet some new people, and hopefully it will lead to more in the future. But as everything is sort of up in the air at the moment, just got to knuckle down and make sure that I let them know that I'm a valuable member of the team when it all starts again.
I mean, have you learned a lot as you've gone through this from some of the people that have been there? Just little tips and things for dealing with games, and I mean, in terms of cutting audio for the radio and everything?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I don't have a degree in journalism. I don't have much technological expertise when it came to that sort of thing when I started shadowing, and when I was, came in for that first day, had a look around, see what everyone was doing and the speed that everyone was doing, the editing and all getting stuff uploaded onto Twitter. I was thinking, wow, this is quite a speed to get up to. But I went in, and then after a couple of times being in there and doing this stuff for myself, I've managed to get to grips with it, and I feel not, obviously there's always room for improvement, but I think that I'd stand in good stead. If someone asks me to do something, I can get it done pretty quickly for them. And, they've said to me, the members of the team said I've been doing really well, and Adam Blackmore himself has said that he's heard really good things. So from a personal point of view, that's really, it's really nice to hear that, and I just hope to do it even more in the future.
Do they let you work the Saints games?
Do they let me work the Saints games? They know I'm a big Saints fan, so sometimes I will go in there and just be like, do you want me to do the Saints game? And they're more than happy to do that. But yeah, I get to do Southampton matches a lot of the time, and I'm not complaining about that whatsoever. Love that.
Yeah. Does it change because you obviously have a job to do? So does it change the kind of way you have to look at the game, or do you find yourself kind of fighting the urge to just focus on just watching the game, and or is it you're able to just compartmentalize it all and kind of go along with it?
Well, at the very start, it was a bit tough because it was like when I started with the audio description commentary. Mm-hmm. As a Saints fan, you really want to get into it. You've got to, start putting up that barrier and just remember that you're there to do a job, and you can't be a fan. You can still be a fan because, the stuff that any cheering is, not going out on air. But at the very start, I was being shown quite a critical thing to do at the same time that Genepo decided he was going to take it round everyone at Sheffield United. So that I was watching that, and they're saying like, Tom, focus. I'm like, wait a minute. And then he scored, and it's like, Tom, come on, we got to focus on this. And I was just thinking, but he's just scored one of the goals of the season. Did you see that? And then that was, it's actually, since then, it's much more reserved. I think one of the most enjoyable matches I've had to do in terms of that was probably Saints against Chelsea, because it was such a good performance. And then once Saints went 2-0 up, you started to relax a bit. I am quite tense when it's 0-0, the game started. Sure. You got to click all the things. But as it goes through, now that I go in, it is pretty relaxed. And, I found it's a lot easier to concentrate on a team that isn't yours. I did a couple of the Bournemouth matches, and that was really quite relaxed because obviously I'm not a fan of either of the teams, so I'm just watching the game and seeing how it goes, editing what I need to. But the Saints games, always that little nerves, as it is with any fan. But it makes it really enjoyable, and then it's also nice to be like, I've been a little part of that as a Saints fan. So.
Well, I mean, so you're working on the production side of things. So what is, I guess, what's the relationship between what we hear on the radio and what you're doing? Because Adam and the team are calling it directly from, Adam and Dave are calling it directly from the stadium, wherever that's at. Is that coming through you and going out, or are you kind of cutting in the highlights and putting those on
it's more just editing audio clips, interviews at the end, okay. Just as the game goes, just little sound bites, that sort of thing. Obviously Adam and Chris, they're all off the different stadiums, so it is coming through us. But at the moment, I'm more into like sound bites, interviews, that sort of things. Just being as helpful as I can wherever they ask me to be. Yeah. Hopefully, hopefully get a bigger as we go on. Maybe so go up the ladder as it were. But it's very early stages, and I've just got to do what I can just to keep in their minds.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and you have on mic experience, obviously, with the Saints AD commentary, and then obviously now you get the production side of it, so you get the backroom stuff as well. So, you'll have a very good understanding of how all this works by the end of it.
Absolutely, and putting those together, the production side of things being on mic, that can only put me in good stead as we go into the future. And I really enjoy doing the AD commentary. It's a privilege to provide, bring the game to life for those fans who are blind and visually impaired. Yeah. So no, I really enjoy it, and I really miss it at the moment with football not happening.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of us miss a lot. I mean, I miss talking about matches that are happening right now and lamenting missed chances and talking about defensive woes. Like, I would take all of that. I wouldn't go all the way back to like Pellegrino. All of that, but like I would take a loss just so we could talk about it, I think. But it'll be here, it'll be back at some point, and I'm sure we'll long for the days when we didn't have to worry about it.
Absolutely. Well, though, one question I have for you is that would you still want VAR back?
Yeah. I want early season VAR back for us. It seems like it's leveled out a little bit, but yeah, I mean, I think we'll be okay. We've benefited enough from it this season that I'll allow it back for, I guess.
Well, it's been such a point of controversy this year. So who knows when obviously if they do start the football season again, then it's not a case of, well, we'll get rid of it and use it another time, because the last 10 games of the season, if they were to say, oh yeah, we won't have VAR, there would be uproar. It's like, why? So the last 10 games, you're not going to have what you've had for the 28th round.
Yeah. If I can ask you, you guys kind of paused the Under the Lights podcast for a little while, and you guys are back doing it now. We're kind of switching gears a little bit, but can you just kind of fill me in on like what's been going on with the show and how you've found doing the show? Have you, obviously you guys are enjoying doing it still, but what's it been like to try to get that going again now that you guys have a little bit of time on your hands?
It's been really good to get it back going again. Callum and I, we thought, we've got this time, why not start it up again? It's the perfect time to get it going again. There was no real reason as to the pause. It was just busy lives, and it was difficult to find time to record another episode. But now we've got that time. We're trying to put up as many episodes as possible, and it's been really enjoyable to do. We had our most recent episode was going down memory lane for Saints, looking back at some really fond, away days, best goals. We talk a bit about the AD service as well, and I really enjoyed being a part of it. And obviously, it sort of keeps my mind ticking over as well in terms of just being in charge of the editing of the podcast. That keeps me ticking over with like the BBC stuff. Actually, gives me something to do that is that's quite relatable to the work that I do there.
Yeah, I guess it keeps you sharp, right? Like
exactly.
Editing audio is something that you learn how to do it, and I kind of have learned from YouTube videos and everything else. But if you don't do it enough, if you take enough time off, all of a sudden it just it gets overwhelming quickly. And so keeping yourself sharp with that is good. And maybe you don't get to use the exact same program as you do at the BBC, but I'm sure it's it all kind of, a lot of them are really similar. So you'll be all right.
Yeah. It's it's something familiar, something to just as I said, keep the cogs on the brain from getting too much dust on them.
That's right. Yeah, but I'm excited this week a little bit because we have some stuff to talk about. I've over the past couple of weeks, there hasn't been a whole lot of news coming out of the club, and there still isn't a lot of news. There's not, we don't have any real clarity as to when the season's going to start again or anything else, but we do have some other things to discuss. So we'll kind of get into that stuff. And I did want to ask you, just looking back at the season so far, I mean, do you have a favorite kind of match that stands out? If the season ended right now, what would be the kind of match to you that stands out from this season?
Oh, well, the one that really stands out has got to be the battering of Portsmouth towards the beginning of the season. Absolutely fantastic night. I wish I could have been there as a fan, but no, that was absolutely fantastic. In terms of a league game, In terms because I was there and I commentated on it, the win against Aston Villa was really satisfying because Saints utterly dominated, and realistically, really it should have been about 4 or 5-0 towards the end of the game, and even that would probably be flattering to Aston Villa. We just couldn't put our chances away, but it was really enjoyable to commentate on a game where you were fairly certain that Southampton were going to come away with the 3 points, and I actually got to... It's my favourite goal of the season to commentate on, but Armstrong's goal against Villa has got to be one of my favourite that I've done since starting the commentary, just because it's quite tense going up to that. We were only 1-0 up. Villa had suddenly got themselves a corner in the very last minute. You're thinking, oh my God, are we actually going to throw this away?
Yeah, we've done this
Villa
before,
this has happened before. Villa have been really, really poor, and the goalkeeper's going up, and suddenly the ball gets whipped and it's headed out, and then you realise that you've got a completely empty net to go for. Shea Adams has played an absolutely brilliant ball across the pitch, and you see just Stuart Armstrong like a train just sprinting away, and you know he's going to get to the ball first, you know he's going to have a shot on goal, and you know it's very likely to be a goal because it's an empty net. And I actually called, probably shouldn't have done, but it's pretty certain. I actually called the goal before the ball had even gone into the net, because I just saw, as soon as he hit it, I said he scored, because the ball is just, it is going to go in. It would take a brilliant defensive block to not put it in. But no, that was really enjoyable, and to then know that Saints were 2-0 up, they were going to get a home win. It was going to be it was really fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. Everything about that match, it was typical Saints in terms of, we should have been up way more. It should have been way more comfortable than it was at that point. You have all that kind of tension in the last moment, and you just the ball from Shea Adams. I think I don't want to say it's gone undervalued, but it was great from him just to be able to kind of get to it, turn and play it, and then, like you said, Armstrong running onto it. Without the hair, maybe he gets there a little bit faster. It has a little bit easier shot, but it's okay. He scores. Yeah, I think that was a big game for us, because we needed points, and it just, Villa maybe had a little bit of confidence coming into that game. It was nice just to take that out of them, and I thought we dealt with Grealish really well that day too. So pretty happy with the team on the day. Are there any other matches that you remember, or moments that you remember kind of distinctly and vividly from either as a fan or calling it on the commentary?
The Man United game at the beginning, the 1-1 draw, was good fun, because the start that Saints made in that game was absolutely phenomenal. Obviously, they didn't score, but for 10 minutes it was just battering United, pressing them really high, and it was really exciting to see this pressing game in full flow. Unfortunately, United then took the lead afterwards, but just that first 10 minutes was really brilliant to watch. In terms of not being there, but the away win against Leicester was fantastic, considering everything that had happened before, the result that we don't want to talk about.
Sure.
Coming into it, not only getting the 3 points against Leicester, but we were playing so well, and we could have won by even more. I mean, we could have scored 3 or 4 that game ourselves. I remember Ings had a brilliant chance towards the end where we broke on the halfway line, and he just had to place it in the corner, and Schmeichel made a brilliant save. But it just felt, that Saints had really, really turned it around. I mean, we were playing, that was when another brilliant performance, the away win at Chelsea, when we were going away and we were dominating teams. The Crystal Palace game at Selhurst Park, we never looked like conceding at all in that game. Yes, they had an early chance where they should have scored, but since that, it was 80 minutes or so of complete domination, and it was really funny to watch Zaha continue to get really, really, really wound up by Ward-Prowse, and Ward-Prowse winning every single challenge. So that's always fun to whip him up. But Saints it was just that run of games where Saints were just going away to teams. I think they won 4 away games in a row. And even then, even though we lost to Liverpool, for the first half we were more than in it, and arguably could have had a penalty early in the second half when Liverpool broke and scored. So it was that period where we just played some fantastic football. But the Leicester one, I think, stands out the most for me just because of what it meant. The turnaround, one of the most embarrassing results in the club's history, and they've gone away and they've dominated. They brought back 3 points, because at the end of the day, Leicester have got 3 points from Saints. Saints have got 3 points off Leicester. it doesn't matter what the score is.
Yeah.
Both teams have come out equal at the end of the season.
Yeah, you think maybe because of the just the goal difference, but at the end of the day, like, you know, we've done enough to kind of get it to kind of balance it out a little bit, and you know, yeah, I'll take that turnaround. And you know, even though we've kind of been off a while, the BBC has done some work, and Adam Blackmore had a chat with Martin Simmons that came out on at least a little bit on Twitter that I saw, asking, talking to him about the 9-0 result and kind of Ralph's reaction to it. Did you happen to catch that at all?
Yeah, I saw a bit of that about how, you know, Ralph was incredibly honest and said, look, if I was your chairman, I'd have sacked me.
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, at the time, after the 9-0 result, you know, we were all shell-shocked. We didn't know what to think. It was just pure embarrassment. It was feeling really, really low. I looking back at it, I'm glad that I wasn't commentating on the game, because it would be, you know, I don't know what I would have had to say. It was crazy, and I think at the time loads of people were calling for Ralph to go, and I can completely understand that. I mean, it's a 9-0 loss, but I thought that Ralph has done all he can on the side, and it's up to the players to do what they have to perform what he wants on the pitch. And I thought Ralph needs to stay, because otherwise we're just going to continue the cycle. And I have to give full credit to Ralph and full credit to the players, because, you know, these are the same players on the pitch that night are the same ones that then won at Chelsea and won at Leicester and beat Palace and beat Tottenham. You know, hats off to all of them. They've turned the season around completely.
Yeah, and I think just looking at how that conversation went, you respect Ralph for coming and saying, like, look, I understand if you sack me, I deserve it at this point. And I also appreciate the club saying there's so much more here that has been done, that you have done, than what showed up there tonight. And we're not going to judge you on this one result, because we know that other things, we've watched you train, we've watched the guys develop, we've seen the team come along, and this is a bump in the road, and we're going to get over it. And just the kind of long-term understanding and vision from the club to stick with it, and for Ralph to understand that, and for the players to get over it, and everything that's happened since then, like that, it was great. And it would have been very easy for people to, you know, for them to just sack the manager and move on to the next one. But I'm definitely in the Ralph in camp. I'm very much behind him and think he's doing a great job, and think we're actually fairly fortunate to be able to have a manager of that quality at the club after the couple of managers that we've had, and, you know, recently. And I just, you know, yeah, we could have really, I think, hurt ourselves had we gotten rid of him. So I thought that was a pretty interesting, you know, little interview that Adam had. And I think Martin Simmons is, you know, really, I think he's definitely making fans happy in terms of you know, he's given us some confidence, I guess, that maybe we have the right people in the job behind the scenes to help Ralph and the players continue to develop.
Oh, absolutely. I think that, you know, Ralph is a superb manager, and I think we're incredibly lucky to have him. And, you know, Saints have gone through a period where it hasn't been good, and I think they now have themselves a manager that can really pull them up the league. And, you know, even more, it's going to be really exciting to see what he can achieve with the club when he can mould the squad, he can get the players that he wants. And it's really encouraging to see those quotes from Martin Simmons of how, you know, the thought of sacking him didn't even cross his mind.
Right.
That shows, you know, that behind the scenes, as you say, the club do have a plan, and they've got the people that they believe are right. And as fans, we can get confidence from that to know that, you know, the club is in a good place at the moment.
I am excited for when we come back, because I feel, like you said, we have the right people in certain positions, and I still think it will take time to sort things out, and things might be a little bit more difficult financially for us going forward, based on kind of what we're going to talk about next. But well, you know, we can only do whatever we can do, and hopefully it kind of all builds from there. But I did want to talk a little bit about finances and things that this week, and maybe nobody else will be excited, but this is something I you know, we talked earlier about, you know, having something concrete to kind of talk about, and I'm kind of excited to discuss this kind of stuff. And the guys over at the Price of Football, Karen McGuire, did a valuation of all of the Premier League teams based on their accounts that they published from the 2018-2019 season. The only team that didn't publish their accounts at the time that he did it was Palace. I guess Palace are notoriously always late for publishing those things, so theirs are not quite right. But Southampton came in at 13th in the table in terms of value of Premier League clubs. And I mean, the shocking thing, I think I sent this over to you, but the most shocking thing to me was the fact that Spurs were valued as the most valuable club in the league, which I think a lot of people maybe had an issue with. Did that shock you at all?
It did a bit, because obviously the team that we associate to be at the very top in terms of value is Manchester City, especially with who backs them, and who knows with the takeover happens where Newcastle will be placed on that. But I did a bit of digging with the Spurs valuation, and I think it's more to do with the fact that they've got this brand new stadium, a lot of sponsorship deals to go with that, a lot of people excited to be associated with that stadium, and I can't, you completely understand why. It's fantastic. I haven't been. I'd like to go because it looks absolutely brilliant, and I'm quite jealous of Spurs that they have such a nice stadium. But I think a lot of it is to do with that. And when something like that opens, everyone wants to. They know it's going to be successful. Everyone wants a piece of it, so that will only increase their value. I think one thing that I really noticed about that of what you showed me was. And it's not exactly a shock, but just how much of a disparity there is between the big 6 teams and then the rest of the league in terms of value.
Yeah. I mean, Spurs. What is it? I mean, that's a gigantic number. But I mean, the drop off. I mean, after Chelsea, Wolves are the next most valuable, £458 million, and that is less than half of what Chelsea is. Chelsea come in at just under half of what Spurs are, though. So even that disparity in the top 6 is huge. And a little bit more to do with the Spurs valuation is that they have the brand new stadium. They have enough seats to bring in match day revenue, which is loads more than they could bring in at the old White Hart Lane. They have a wage bill that is, £100 million to £150 million less than the other members of the top 6. Well, at least of Manchester City, Manchester United, and Liverpool. So, and they got to a Champions League final. So they did all of these things, and that just shoots their value way up. And they're also in London, so they're a tourist attraction. So you have these people that can come on a match day, and when the tourists show up, the first thing they do is go to the shop and buy the jersey and the scarf and everything else. Whereas if you go to a place like maybe say Everton, not so much of a tourist destination, or Fulham, which is not big enough to hold kind of anybody other than the season ticket holders. And I know they have the neutral stand and all that stuff, but you can't. It's hard to get other tickets there, so you get season ticket holders in, and when they go in, they have a beer and a pie, and that's it. And so that the big difference in terms of revenue they can bring on a match day is there. And then from then on, it kind of boils down to TV rights deals and things like that. And I think that's one of the things that if you look at where we finish in there, we're valued at £269 million. Most of our money over the past, since we've been promoted back has come from selling players, right? Like we have over £250 million just in selling players to Liverpool in that time. So like we've relied on that business model, which could be a problem going forward, I think, based on what's likely to happen to player values as we go forward, because the projection is that everybody's value in terms of what they can be sold for and things like that is going to go down, which means that all of these guys we have on our books, think of Wesley Hoot, guys like this, like all of their values are going to go down. Yannick Vestergaard, that value is going to go down. We need to get rid of them in order to continue this business model, and it's going to make it a little bit harder. So we could likely see our value continue to slip and go backwards if we don't kind of change these things, or if we don't kind of adjust the business model a little bit to make up for that.
I think that's a really good point, because obviously with everything that's going on, we're going to those player values are going to go down, and as we've seen, the owner of Southampton has said he wants Saints to be self-sufficient. So a lot of the what we spend on players needs to be generated from player sales, and obviously that value, the value has gone down in recent years, and quite obviously because Saints haven't had the quality that they've had in past years to actually be able to sell. They don't currently have someone like Sadio Mane, Virgil van Dijk, which can accumulate 100 million of transfer fees just on their own. And obviously, I think another reason that the value might be a bit lower is just because Saints finished 16th, and therefore the income that they had for their finish, and then the season before that, I think it was 17th. So in terms of the actual prize money that they get for their positioning in the table could account for that as well. But I think it's a good point about the player values. I don't know which particular players Saints are going to look to sell. That you think the ones that come to mind will be Mario Lemina. There was a rumour that I saw someone on Twitter that Saints' asking price had been dropped to 9 million for Lemina. I don't know if that's true, but it just shows how much the market is switching. Do they want to try their arm and give Elianusi another chance, or are they going to think that he's gone? Wesley Hoot, another one that Saints, it seems, especially with the transfer activity, that it's a player that Ralph has said he doesn't want him in his plans. So yeah, but I think that's going to be a problem for all the teams. And one thing that I had to think about with the coronavirus situation is the longer that there's a gap between matches. Another thing to think about is that football is a short career in the grand scheme of things. Yeah. Players, especially young players, might get a bit itchy feet quite quickly because essentially we might be looking at a year out of their career just gone like that, and they're going to be wanting to develop onto the next stage and thinking if they've got their own career path, a young player might think, well, I'm expecting to move to a big club by now, so it might make it difficult for certain clubs if players are getting itchy feet and they want to move on, whereas they may have spent the last year developing even more as a player, and that's part of the contract, and then their club, they're saying to the club, look, I want to move, I want to progress. But that's because, and maybe older players as well I don't know how, they might be quite worried about, especially in the lower leagues, their career, they're coming towards the end of their career, they're going to, they still need their wages, they still, I can't remember about what the situation is with footballers. Are they being paid? I have no idea about that. You'd imagine that some of the would be. So in the Premier League, maybe money's not so much of an issue, but it's certainly in the lower leagues, these players are thinking, look, I need to at least get some more, try and get my final pay rise before I retire, so I can set my family up. So that's another thing. So as well as player prices going down, are we going to see players move on that previously may have stayed at their current club for another year or two, but because their career has just suddenly been cut short by another year, are they going to be itching to move on? We're going to see a lot of transfer demands from younger players that want to develop as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and I think some of the things that we've seen with teams is that they don't have large cash reserves. A lot of these teams are operating kind of, month to month, day to day. And so when you all of a sudden have, 2, 3, 4 months of you got to pay, you have to pay people, they don't have that money. And so you're looking at players either deferring portions of their wages, like the players at Southampton have done, or and other clubs have done, or you look at other situations, things that are happening where some clubs are having to lay people off. Some clubs are having to, cancel. You look at, you think even if the men's team survives, women's teams and things may not survive because they tend to operate at a loss anyway. So it's not the most pleasant of viewing figures, but the valuation of these clubs comes in and it looks at a couple of things, and one of them is match day revenue. And so you talk about with Spurs get a bunch there. Obviously, player sales and things like that count, and that's where the bulk of ours has come in. And Saints have been praised by that, and I've been honestly, the ability to identify, young talent or talent that has been missed by other people and then turn that into a profit. That's a great, the black box has done great things if it ever existed, period. But that model though tends to you have a couple of misses and all of a sudden you get in some real trouble. And I think that could be an issue later on. And the other big kind of source of income is getting on TV and being on TV and being, everybody gets the same amount for the first 10 games. So if you're on TV 10 times, you don't get any extra money. That's the money that everybody gets. And then every time you get on TV after that, you increase the money you get as a result of that by either somewhere between £1 million and £1.5 million per time you're on TV. Well, if you think about the football we've played over the past couple of seasons, it wasn't that great under Puel. It wasn't that great under Pellegrino. It wasn't that great under Hughes. And so we fell from, being on TV like 16 times to the next season, to 2018, 2019, being on TV only 8 times, which means we didn't make any extra money on that. And so, you look at that and you're talking somewhere between, 8 and 14 million pounds extra that we could be earning if we were playing better football. And that turns out to be pretty significant in terms of what we're looking at in terms of the value of the club and in this kind of self-sustaining model that we have.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously fans, who pay for those TV packages would not have wanted to. They wouldn't have been really keen to look at some of the football that we were playing earlier on under like the likes of Pellegrino and I think that will increase as we go forward. Hasenhüttl certainly got them playing a really exciting brand of football. It's taken a little time to actually get it to click, but it's a difficult one with the club valuation because obviously we're in that clump of teams. We talked about the disparity between the top 6 and the rest of the team, and then from Wolves down, it's only a matter of just a few million in between each club. So if you think about it, that is where that TV money could be coming in. But another team just plays a slightly bit more exciting in a particular season, and that can maybe switch them up maybe 1 or 2 places. So I think it's very tight in that group towards sort of middle towards the bottom.
Yeah.
And obviously that came at a time that Saints weren't doing so well, and they weren't with the match day revenue. When you're not playing good football, the number of fans who want to come to the games is going to go down as well. Mm-hmm. And I found myself, especially under Pellegrino, I wasn't that enthused about going to the stadium because we just weren't playing very well. So if I felt like that, if loads of other fans felt like that, then you're going to have a lot. You are going to see a dip in attendances. Yeah. So it'll be interesting to have a look at this valuation for the next year, when obviously Saints are now playing more exciting. There've been huge crowds at St Mary's. The fans are really enjoying the football. It's the players seem to be enjoying the football as well. That actually brings me to the last game we played before football got stopped. Newcastle at home. Now, obviously we lost. It was very disappointing, but the atmosphere at St Mary's was absolutely fantastic. They were, they're just cheering the players on. And I think that's something a couple of years ago under Pellegrino, if we'd gone 1-0 down to Newcastle, you may not have seen that. The fans didn't buy into the philosophy as much. But with under Hasenhüttl, they're getting really behind the team. They know that the players are doing their utmost. They're trying their best to play in this particular match. And obviously the fans had the bit between their teeth. Jennifer got sent off. I think it was rightfully a red card. I don't want to go all the way back just to discuss the match, but was it a red card? From my view, as a commentator, I wasn't quite sure, but then we don't have a replay, so I just thought he might have nicked him a little bit as he went past, because I was quite surprised that the referee had even blown for a foul, and then obviously he gets sent off, and because we don't have a replay, we're left to think, is it a red card? So we're thinking at half time someone's got to get on YouTube and have a look at the foul. We saw it and said, okay, yeah. He's not intended to do that, but in the laws of the game, it is a red card. It's quite dangerous. So we were just a bit. I was certainly perplexed about how later on in the game, Newcastle didn't get sent down to 10 men as well when Manquillo he slid into Bertrand's chest. Did he pull out? I'm not quite sure. And then obviously the penalty, which I thought was incredibly harsh because Buffal, yes, it's touched part of his arm, but if you look close to it, the Newcastle player is actually tugging him so that his body shape has swung in that direction. So it was a harsh one. I said I didn't want to talk about the game, but I've just gone and done it anyway. But, going back to it, the fans were fantastic for the entirety of that game, even when it was backs against the wall, and that will show, I think, in the next figures as they come out, that the fans have really bought into Ralph, they've bought into the manager. There's going to be an increase in matchday revenue you'd expect, and then maybe Saints playing more exciting football. Will that put them a couple of places higher than they did in this particular graph?
Yeah. It's hopefully we see that kind of swing, and obviously the finances come out after it takes a while, like they're a full year behind essentially. So we won't see kind of how this season goes until we're in the next season, but it is important. And I mean, we've made a profit of over £250 million in terms of player sales, that's net profit on player sales. And that's great, but we're going to struggle to continue to do that. Cause if you think, you've had a couple of really big name players go in that time. Think of Van Dijk, you think of Mane, think of Schneiderlin, you think of all these guys who have gone for big money. And you just wonder who's the next player that goes for big money from Southampton. It's kind of, I don't know. Unless Højbjerg goes, maybe people are talking about that, but we'll see how all of this plays out. And I don't want to go in and do a bunch of speculation. There's enough of that out there. But one of the things that could affect this as well in terms of us attracting new talent is this, post-Brexit, things are going to change in terms of getting players in from the European Union for just from outside the UK. All of a sudden, all these other rules that apply to getting players from outside of the European Union or the European kind of free trade area, now that applies to everybody from outside of the UK. And all of a sudden, it takes into account things like the number of international caps and the quality of the international team they play for. So the higher ranked FIFA ranked teams, you have a better chance of getting that work permit kind of approved. The number of caps they have, the size of the transfer fee, which I think is going to be big, and the size of the wages they'll be making in relation to the players at the team and the league overall. And all of a sudden, as I'm seeing these things kind of come together, I get really, really worried about us being able to attract the next player that we need and can develop that can then be sold for a high profit that will allow this model to continue. And I'm worrying about this too much, but I am definitely worried about this. And I don't know if you've looked at it at all, or
I think to counter that, every other team in the Premier League is going to have the same issue, I think. So it's not like it's going to be just against Saints for that. Every team is going to be having the same difficulty in signing players. I think to swing a positive view on that, it could give a lot of if we're unable to get particular players, it could give some of the good talents in the academy even better chance to get into the team. And then if they do play really, really well, then essentially your investment into them as a player throughout their time is probably still far less than a natural transfer fee. And then if, for example, let's throw out a name and say Will Smallbone turns out to be absolutely incredible. He's one of the most sought after Premier League midfielders. If Saints were then to decide to sell him, they would be essentially getting a huge profit on him, because they haven't really spent much of a transfer fee into him in terms of that kind of income. And as fans, we love it when one of our own comes through. Yes, Danny Ings is one of our own, but he's come back. But there's a huge connection between the fans and a player that they know is pretty much Southampton through and through. And if we are unable, if it's going to get a bit more difficult to sign players from afar, then it gives more chance for some academy lads to come through, and then Saints fans can feel an even greater connection to the team. Jake Bokins looks like a fantastic talent. Smallbone's already shown that he can, in his brief minutes, that he's certainly capable of playing in the Premier League. Obafemi, he scored a couple of goals. It seems to me that he has a couple of fitness issues, maybe with injuries, but there's certainly a quality player in there. And, there are other talents coming through that Ralph wants to try out. Slattery, another player who looks quite exciting. Saints have a track record of producing good youngsters, so it could it could actually be a real positive for Saints that they can bring even more youth players through. And if they were to decide to sell them in the future, then they would be essentially making a profit on pretty much all of them.
Yeah, and they may be able to command a slightly higher price for those simply because the number of players, of homegrown players that you may have to have, from that number is expected to go up as a result of this post-Brexit football deal, and as a result of that, maybe English players, like you said, more of a chance for them to get into the team. So that emphasis that we have on the academy and developing those players, that will do us well, and other teams may be looking to bring those people in. That could, like, as you said, that could be a source of income for us going forward. So that is true. I was kind of thinking about some of the players that we've had over the past a couple of transfer windows, and Djenepo might have been able to get in because of the size of the transfer fee and the fact that he had been playing for Mali for so long. He had been involved, but I think I think based on what I was able to just kind of throw together in the last couple of hours or whatever, I don't think Bednarak would have made it. Not enough senior caps for his for Poland, who are not highly ranked on the FIFA table or the FIFA world ranking at that point. He is coming from a top division league, but the transfer fee was so low that a lot of people would have said he wouldn't have done it. So like we may have not have had Jan Bednarak had this been there. And granted, that's one player, but I was just trying to like kind of put it together and see how this could be there. And my biggest thing here is, if we're missing some of those big name stars that come, because a lot of players come from outside of the Premier League, they come from outside of England. If you're missing those big name stars and the talent is more spread evenly across Europe, maybe that makes the Champions League a little more entertaining because teams are a little more evenly matched. But at the same time, the TV rights deals that so many of us, so many teams rely on, I think 75% of Southampton's income comes from the TV rights deal, just the base package. If that goes down because the quality of the league goes down a little bit, then, all of a sudden the money for transfer fees and things lessens and lessens. And once again, that will put more emphasis on the academy. So that could be, we could be in a good position for this and being able to just scout youngsters and develop them. Like maybe this will work out for us, but I still think that, the big six, I think will have, because they have the money, they can pay the higher transfer fee. They can get the stars from other leagues and from these countries that are ranked higher in the FIFA ranking. All of a sudden it becomes, you could see them pull even further away, but it all kind of depends on how it all works out. And we're speculating. Maybe I'm freaking out about nothing, but I've seen everything else in life kind of spiral downward. I just don't want to see the league and the team do that as well.
No, I completely understand, and it's going to be difficult. But then again, like I said, this will apply to all the other teams as well. Yes, the larger teams will be able to pay those large fees, and they'll be able to buy these players from countries that are doing well in the FIFA rankings. So that seems to have been the norm for quite a while in terms of the big six might just continue to build a gap between them and the teams below, although Leicester and Wolves are doing a fantastic job of breaking into. And of course, Sheffield United, I'd be gutted for them if the season were to be made null and void because they've had a superb season. But anyway, I digress from the main point, which is that, this could be an issue, and I think it will be an issue for some teams. Like you said, we may not have signed Bednarik, and that would have been, in hindsight, if we hadn't had Bednarik, where would we be defensively? But I think there's certainly some positives to be taken out. The thought of that we could, Nicola Cortese did have that dream of having 50% of the starting 11 from the academy. So who knows? Maybe many years after he has not been chairman, we may be having to do that due to maybe any possible transfer restrictions.
Yeah, and I should just kind of, I guess, look at what I said earlier and just say, like, my relationship with the Premier League, I've only been around since kind of the nature of the Premier League has been buy big stars from everywhere else around the world, and so I understand that a lot of people that have been around football for longer than I have, that have seen this they've seen it shift from, if you look at go back to 76, like how many of those players were from anywhere other than the UK, and not very many, right? Like all of these players were born and bred in and around England, and so because of that, like this shift away from that, I think a lot of people will be happy to see more homegrown players, and I think as long as we remember that and realize that the players are good, like there are plenty of good English players that can come in and fill in teams. But just I think the reason it's a shock for me is because it's something different than what I've been been accustomed to, I guess, and so that'll come in. But just to end this portion on a positive note, in terms of South Coast teams, we are the highest valued club on the South Coast, without a doubt. Bournemouth, the only team in the Premier League to come in under £100 million, according to this valuation. So take that. Also, Brighton's down there as well. Portsmouth doesn't make the list because they only did Premier League clubs. So we'll just move on from that there, unless you have anything to add to it.
No, not particularly. I think we've covered it quite well. And as I said, it's nice to come out on top on the South Coast.
Yeah, I imagine some people will have shut this off because they're like, "What are we doing?" But I like finances. I like numbers. Sorry to everybody out there. We have just a couple of questions this week. And I should say, Southampton News Now wrote an article about Michael Obafemi. You mentioned Michael Obafemi earlier for the newsletter that was out on Friday. So if you kind of missed that, want to read a little bit more about Obafemi, the link is on the website in the show notes, and you can get to the newsletter to do that. And also, he's been doing a lot of other stuff, a lot of interviews and things over on his Instagram page. So it's Southampton News Now. You can check that out. But he asks us I think it's a fairly difficult question about midfielders, and he says rank these 5 from best to worst. So you have Romeu, Ward-Prowse, Schneiderlin, Højbjerg, and Wanyama. How do you rank those in terms of midfielders?
Well, it's quite difficult to rank those because they do different jobs. I think let's assume that all of them are in their prime. It actually gets really quite difficult. Ward-Prowse, I think, would come on top for me just because he's really added a lot to his game. He's running around. He's added and he's running the most. He's scoring some fantastic goals. He's also, he's adding a bit of bite to his game, which we didn't really see from him in his early career. He sort of floated through the game, maybe sometimes was a bit lightweight, but now he's really aggressive. He's like a terrier in the middle, just sort of snapping at people's heels. And that's really good to see, like a midfielder, and especially someone who I think could be and should be Saints captain in the future. And he is a leader on the pitch. So I probably rank him top. I was Schneiderlin there as well in that list.
Yes, he is.
Schneiderlin, I think, would come second for me because I love Morgan. I think he epitomised the rise from the Championship down to League One and then all the way back up again, and then staying for that final season to get us into European football. He would come second purely because I'm a big fan of Ward-Prowse, but Schneiderlin then would come second for me. He was a fantastic player. He would just nonchalantly hit a 50-yard ball, and it would be inch perfect to whoever it was aimed to go at. And to have that kind of quality in League One was incredible. And there was a brilliant quote from Nigel Adkins at the beginning of the Championship season where he said, we've got a really good side here. Morgan Schneiderlin is probably the best midfielder in the entire league, but he can't get into our team because Schneiderlin was on the bench for the first game. And I thought that was, he was a brilliant midfielder. I was incredibly sad when he did leave, but I thought that, he'd given his all, and he had a bit of a tantrum, and because he wasn't allowed to go. Then he said, "Yeah, I'll stay for the final year," and he put his heart and soul into that, and that was fantastic. And he left on a high. And after that, so we've got I'd say Højbjerg, because on his day he's a brilliant player, and certainly last season he was on top form and was running the midfield, winning the ball back really well, scoring some fantastic goals, and he's another really good leader on the pitch. I really rate him, and I think at the moment he is one of our better midfielders as well. And he shows a lot of passion on the pitch, and he could probably be a captain as well. And then I'd probably have it's difficult to choose between Wanyama and Romeo, because in the 16-17 season, Romeo was absolutely unplayable. He was one of our best players for that season because he won everything in the midfield. He controlled the midfield, and I think the reason we managed to finish 8th in that season was because he was such a tenacious midfielder during that season and just broke up the play. He didn't care about if he got any yellow card. He's a player who, the referee would probably give him a warning and he'd just be like, yeah, don't care, I'm still going to do it. And he'd pick up the booking. He was fantastic midfield, but it's difficult to choose between him and Wanyama, because Wanyama, again, another player on his day, was sensational. I think I'd go for Romeo as 4th, just because Wanyama sometimes did get a bit reckless, and I remember in the 15-16 season he got sent off a couple of times where, that really decided those games. I think one of them was Norwich away. This is a game that we can go and win, and then he got himself sent off and we ended up losing the game, and it sort of felt like he let the team down as a fan. It's difficult. I think Romeo, if we're choosing about players on their peak, at their peak, Romeo in that 16-17 season was fantastic, and that I'd put him just above Wanyama for that one. Some fans are probably going to think, how on earth have you put Wanyama bottom? But, come at me.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it really depends on just you look at the role they played in the team at the time and things like that, and the list is difficult to put together because you could kind of stick, I think, any of these guys next to JWP in a 4-2-3-1 or a 4-2-2-2, and they would be fine. Højbjerg has been the captain. He's fallen off a little bit this season. JWP seems to still have maybe the highest ceiling, Romeu had a good season and played very, very well. Hasn't quite done it again. In Wanyama, he's now playing in the MLS, or MLS. I'm not supposed to say "the" in front of it, but he's now playing in MLS, and I mean that just shows you kind of how things haven't quite worked out from him. Schneiderlin hasn't quite hit those heights either. So I think I can't disagree with your list or your reasoning all that much. I think if you could just start 2 of them, I'd be peak Schneiderlin and peak JWP. I think that'd be fine. You could also maybe play a 4-2-3-1 and put JWP a little bit further forward. But I think what he's shown this year is he can handle himself in a 2 just fine. So, yeah, I like your reasoning there. I like the list, and I mean I miss watching Wanyama and Schneiderlin in the midfield a little bit. Like, that was a good season that they had, even though Wanyama tended to get himself sent off a little bit.
Just on that point, actually, about midfield, one player that's missing out of that list that I would love to include was my friend Luke and I. We had a season ticket from League One, the 3 seasons from League One up to the Premier League, and the partnership between Morgan Schneiderlin and Jack Cork was fantastic. He plays as a central midfielder himself, and he said his game was all about what Jack Cork did, because and he would say after the game, I'd go, what do you make of that game? And he said, I don't really watch too much of it. I was just watching what Jack Cork was doing, because I think that the Schneiderlin and Cork partnership was really underrated at the time, and they worked so well in a pivot with each other. And yes, Jack Cork is not, you don't think of him straight away when it comes to Saints midfielders, but I think he's an incredibly underrated player. I was quite disappointed when he did leave, but he left under him when Kuma was in charge because he wasn't getting that much game time, and I respect that he wanted to move so he could be a first-team player somewhere else. But I don't know where I'd put him on the list, but Jack Cork, I think, is definitely an honourable mention for one of my favourite midfielders that have been at the club.
Yeah, and I know a lot of fans that were around when he was kind of at the team really kind of respect what he brought to the team and really, I guess, remember him fairly fondly, which is good. We got a bunch of other stuff from Instagram. Most of it is people not asking questions, which is great. We did get a lot of questions from Vinzu. There's a lot of O's there. I don't know how many, but there's a lot. And he's got a lot of questions here. I don't know if you can see them on the outline. We shouldn't answer all of them because we'll be here, through next week's show. But do you see any in there that you'd like to kind of take a crack at?
Yeah, one of them is the one about the best Italian player that Saints have had. And I did a bit of digging. When I saw the outline, I did a bit of digging. And the only three that I could find was Valdo, Pella, and Gabbiadini. The best Italian out of all of them, I think, is quite easy to pick, and that's Graziano Pella. 30 goals during his two seasons. He was, he was filling big shoes because he was filling the position of Lambert, essentially. He was Saints' target man. Lambert had left. Saints needed a new striker, a new focal point. Rodriguez was out on the sidelines injured for pretty much the entire year. Pella came in, and he was absolutely fantastic. And he seemed, both seasons seemed to mirror each other in terms of he'd start off really, really well, not score between December and March, and then score quite like 5 or 6 at the very end of the season. I really like Pella as a player, and on form, he was, a joy to watch. When he wasn't on form, it was quite painful. So he would keep on trying those flicks, those little tricks, and they wouldn't come off. But when he was on form, they would go everywhere. And of course, the overhead kick against QPR is just an absolutely sensational goal. And the quality, I mean, this guy is he's 6'2", 6'3". He's a big guy, and he's just gone for the overhead kick. You normally associate overhead kicks with more nimble players, but Pella, he's managed to do that, and he's hit it so sweetly. I really, and the partnership that he had with Dusan Tadic was, they obviously loved playing together. Tadic showed up when Pella was playing, and Pella showed up when Tadic was playing. It was a really, really good combination, and you can actually tell in the season that Pella left that Tadic looked a little bit lost in terms of who he's going to pass it to, and maybe, that whilst we finished in 8th, there were some subpar performances in there that we were quite disappointed, the lack of goals for one of them. And obviously that was, I think, Tadic not having a focal point that he was used to. They knew their game inside and out. The other two, Osvaldo, he scored a fantastic goal, and it was a case of what might have been if he'd actually not been an absolute nutcase and head-butted Fonte. And Gabbiadini, he'll always be a bit of a cult hero. He scored those 2 goals in the League Cup final. Should have been 3. If he kept up that form, then he would have been arguably, I reckon, if he kept up that form, he'd probably go top of the list. But he didn't. He did score that memorable goal to keep us in the Premier League. Swansea away. I went nuts for that one. Love it. I do like Manolo. I wish it could have worked out. But if we're going on actual stats and the quality of the player, then Pella's got to come top out of all of them. Looking at any other question, who's a realistic big name player we could afford and would fit into the system? I don't know of any big name players that stand out that are going to come to Saints. I think in terms of a big name player and what they could turn out to be, I think Ibrahim Konate, the centre back for RB Leipzig, would be a really, really good buy for Saints. He is a young player who I think would fit perfectly into Ralph's system, and obviously being at Leipzig, he'll know about Hasenhüttl, and he'll know how Ralph wants his teams to play. And he's one of those players, I think, that may not be a huge name now, but could certainly do, add a bit of 2014 to 2016 Southampton dust on him, and he could turn out to be one of those players. And then any problem that we had with not getting profits from transfers with someone like him could be thought long into the past. And in terms of realistic, I think Saints obviously, are we going to keep Walker Peters? Are we going to go into the market? I don't know, but you always see rumours about trying to get Myler, the right back, and whenever I've seen him play, he seems a really, really good player, and I think Saints it'd be a bit of a coup for Saints because he's such a quality player. You'd argue that he could probably do a job at one of the bigger clubs, but if Southampton were able to get him, then that would be a coup in terms of the level that Saints are at. So yeah, those two players. I think if we are going to buy anyone in the summer, I think defence needs to be looked at. Cedric has gone to Arsenal. Are we going to get Walker Peters? Valerie seems to be out with an illness that keeps on going on, and I think we're sorted in terms of attacking staff. We've got Jennifer, we've got Ings, we've got other players coming through. Midfield seems to be all right as well. So my personal view would be Saints should go with the defence, maybe even go for a goalkeeper, because they bought Gunn for the future. He hasn't been in the best of form, and we've gone back to having McCarthy. Whilst both of them are good goalkeepers, if you want to get to the next level, maybe try and I don't know. I think if we are going to improve, my only personal preference would probably be just invest in the defence.
Yeah, I don't see a problem with that. I think that's definitely a place we need. If we're going to buy a midfielder, it's going to have to be a midfielder that's going to come in and start. And that means, somebody's going to have to make way for that. And I don't know. I think that a lot of that depends on Højbjerg's decision and how that plays out with him. So we'll just got to see how that goes. But let's be honest about the Italian players. It's got to be Pella. Like, the man is beautiful. In every way imaginable. And then Gabbiadini for the goal. And then there was also a guy named Fred Kemp. His dad was English in the army, born to an Italian mother, so he's Italian, technically. Never played for Italy, but did play for Southampton. That was back in the 60s, I believe. Yep, in the 60s and in 1970. So he was there. I would put him ahead of Osvaldo just because of his what he did. Like, he's just got to go. He's got to go as far down the list as I can shove him because of that. And that's it. That's it for me. But I mean, Tom, unless you have anything else, I think we've covered it all. I was very excited to talk to you. I hope. Sometimes I think the economics discussion sounds more exciting in my head than maybe it comes off. But I appreciate you putting up with that, and thanks for joining the show.
Oh no, thank you very much for having me on. It's been a pleasure to be on and chat about some football whilst there isn't any. Hopefully, when things are safe to do so, we will have some football to chat about, and it'll be fun to possibly come back on after discussing how Saints have come away with a win in their first game back, whoever that may be against them, whenever that may be.
Absolutely. I mean, I want the football back just as much as anybody. It's just going to take time. I think it's better to probably wait a little bit longer than to rush it back and risk, people's health and safety and things like that. I think that's much more important. And I think you look around some of the other leagues, and more leagues are starting to cancel seasons and stuff. So we'll have to kind of see how it all shapes up and how that impacts the club going forward. And there was a link, supposedly with a new owner. So we'll see. We'll just let that play out before we spend a lot of time worrying about that or hoping for that or anything else. But I just want to say thanks again for coming on. People want to find you on Twitter, they can do that. You're at T214 Murray. You can also find the Under the Lights podcast and subscribe. That is on Twitter at _Saints. And of course, Alan March Sport and Saints AD Commentary. Those things are there for when we return. For people who are blind or visually impaired, they can get some commentary so they can be up to date with everything going on the pitch. And until then, I just say thanks and hope that as you get back in to Solent Sport and things that when things pick up, that you enjoy that and that you and the team and your family and everybody else continue to do well.
Thank you very much, and I hope the same for your family, to keep safe, and we'll hopefully be enjoying football in the not too distant future.
And that does it for this week's episode of the Southampton Delivery Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope that you've enjoyed it. Special thanks this week goes out to Tom Murray. You can find him on Twitter at T214Murray. You can get in touch with Alan March Sport, which is who provides the Saints AD commentary. We didn't talk about it at length this time. Tom's been on the show before, so links are in the show notes to get in touch with that if you have any questions about that, or you know somebody who can make use of that once football is back. Tom is also involved with the Under the Lights podcast. You can find that at _Saints on Twitter. The link is in the show notes. If you're a Saints fan, get in touch and give it a listen. If you want to follow this show while you're on social media, you can do that. We are at SFCDELL_IVERY on both Twitter and Instagram. We're also on Facebook at facebook.com/SFC Delivery. You get in touch with all of that and more by going to southamptondelivery.com. There you'll find links to all of the social media, plus ways to subscribe to the show and the newsletter, which comes out each and every Friday. The show would be impossible to do without the partners of the show. Matt Beeling of the We Are Southampton page on Instagram does the logo for the show. the Southampton page, which you can find on Twitter at Southampton Page and Instagram at Southampton Page 1. Keep me and you up to date with everything going on around the club, even in this time of non-football. All music for the show comes courtesy of the Free Music Archive at freemusicarchive.org. The intro song is Epic Song by Boxcat Games, and the end of show credits that you're listening to right now is Aim is True by Poddington Bear. As always, we'll be back on Friday with another newsletter and back next Tuesday with another episode. If you have any questions, be sure to send them in. I always enjoy hearing from you. And if you like the finance discussion, you can check out The Price of Football. It's a great podcast, one that I personally enjoy, and you may as well. That's enough for this week. We'll talk to you next time. And until then, remember that together, we march on. And now, a poem. Roses are red, violets are blue. The worst thing I've seen all lockdown is Star Wars Episode 2. Anakin's and who cares about Naboo? So let's let Qui-Gon be a bygone and just kill off Dooku. To be completely honest, I'm not sure what's worse. Me sitting here doing this on May 4th or you sitting here listening to it on May 5th. Whatever it is. Thanks for listening. Talk to you next time.